Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Reeder. I'm the Executive Director of Export Control and Secure Research Operations. Just a few minor sort of, housekeeping items. One is that this particular presentation will be recorded. So this will be put online so that you can go back and review. You can share with your colleagues if you'd like. As well as these slides will be made available online as well. And we can get that information out to you once we have that posted. Also, this presentation is being recorded, as I just said. So keep that in mind as we're going through. Let's see, finally, it looks like everyone's microphones are off, everyone's cameras are off. I think we've now gone through almost a year of Zoom now and have figured out all the etiquette associated with that. So once again, I want to thank you for joining. And today we're going to talk about foreign government influence in university research. This has been a very, very prevalent topic over the last 6 months, really to a year for academia. And just as an introduction to sort of some of the things we're going to touch on today, global research, technological competition worldwide has expanded the range of concerns and the level of risk for the integrity of university research. International collaboration is a big part of expanding what we do in academia. But it also creates the possibility for improper foreign government influence, ranging from the misdirection of research to theft of data, intellectual property, methods and ideas. And so what I'd like to go through in the next 30 to 45 minutes or so is to talk about what activities are associated with foreign government influence. What are some of the methods of collection of research, intellectual property, data? How are these actors getting involved and getting access to some of the research that we're doing? What are the red flags to look out for? What is it that motivates researchers to take part with regards to foreign governments? And what are the inherent risks that are out there to the university, to the researcher, or our institutions? So we'll talk about activities now that are associated with foreign government influence. There's 6 sort of most frequently identified activities. And I'm going to take a step back and say that and you'll get some links here at the end of the presentation, but a lot of the information that's being presented today comes from a number of reports and a number of papers that have been put out over the last, I would say, 6 months or so, JCOR, MITRE, and from the Office of Science Technology Policy. So there'll be links to that here at the end, and we'll be able to go ahead and share those with you as we go. So going back, some of the most frequently identified activities and behaviors that are associated with improper government influences they're broken up into 2 groups, right? There's external influences. There's the things that, those outside of academia or outside of our university, their influence, which can come in the form of espionage, theft of intellectual property, data, materials, methods, and foreign talent programs that are, for lack of a better term, improper. And then there's sort of the things that are internal to the researcher, that are the responsibilities that we have as being part of academia, being part of this research enterprise, which has to do with disclosure and the failure to disclose relationships, conflicts of interest, and conflicts of commitments. So we're going to run through these 6 things a little bit in more depth and talk a little bit more about sort of how they impact the university. Get this set up here. There we go. So, these 2 sort of work hand in hand with regards to theft of intellectual property and espionage, where theft, we talk about bad actors exploiting the openness of our academic research enterprise. That's one of the great things about academia, is that it is open. It is for free-flowing ideas to better science, to better research in all areas, right? However, there are those who exploit that. And they do so by coming into the academic and research environments and steal ideas, intellectual property, data, and they use that for their own purposes without paying for it, without being a part of it. And there's also the idea of espionage, where bad actors carry out surveillance for theft of valuable information, where you have individuals with bad intents coming to academic environments to get a better idea of what research is being done and gaining access to that information pre-publication before it gets out there. And that can do harm for a number of areas, including our economic and national security. So, these are things that are somewhat outside of our control, but at the same time, we have some best practices and some ideas that will really allow for us to better protect ourselves against that. Some of the methods that they use to steal intellectual property, to conduct espionage, has to do with requests for information, academic solicitation, which those two really go hand in hand. They can utilize our network access and vulnerabilities in our network. As researchers, as faculty, conferences, conventions, trade shows, a lot of that is a big part of getting, and conveying your research out to the public, but at the same time, that makes you a target. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Foreign visits, how to protect yourself with foreign visits. We have a number of visitors that come through our university. They add great value to our university, but also, again, it's a vulnerability for us. And then finally, the recruitment of faculty. Oftentimes, foreign governments will have ways in which they can recruit our researchers and our faculty. And so we're going to step through each one of these. It's going to be a lot of dense information, but it's a lot of really good information. So I want to make sure you guys have access to that. So this first one for requests for information, and again, requests for information and academic solicitation really go hand in hand. And these next two slides are almost identical. So I'm going to skip ahead to the academic solicitation. And this method uses students, professors, and scientists, researchers as collectors, attempting to obtain sensitive or classified information. These requests can originate from foreign universities or academic centers. Individuals overseas are placed in the US, and quasi-governmental organizations like research centers and institutions reaching out to faculty, to the university, as a way to sort of begin to gather information. And there's a number of indicators of academic solicitation that we see really every day that we don't even think about, right? And I'm going to skip to the second bullet because every faculty probably gets some sort of this. They see this every day, right? U.S. researchers receiving unsolicited emails from peers in their academic field, soliciting assistance. U.S. researchers receiving unsolicited emails from students who want to come and work in their labs. Foreign students often accepted to a university where postgraduate research programs are recruited by their home country to collect information. I mean, we are seeing more and more of these instances with government sponsorship for foreign students coming to the US with this requirement to report back what they're doing, and also to sort of collect information and maybe intellectual property and data and methodology and send that back. That's a form of academic solicitation. Oftentimes, US professors, and again, this is something that happens regularly, professors or researchers are invited to attend or submit a paper for international conferences. But oftentimes, things you have to watch out for is when they're asking for those papers, those preprints, that information months and months in advance. That's an indicator of something that might be just slightly off. So oftentimes, other indicators include overqualified candidates looking to work in labs as interns, candidates seeking to work in laboratories where the work is not compatible with what's going on in your field of research. So something just seems a little bit off. So the things that you can do to counter against academic solicitation like that is to view these unsolicited academic requests with suspicion, especially those that are coming via email. There are so many different ways in which bad actors can infiltrate you through your email. And sometimes it's just a matter of sending a CV that maybe has some malware attached to it. It might just be the fact that they are trying to find ways to get into these programs, and you just need to do a little bit more of understanding and verifying their identity, their address, and making sure that these requests are legitimate, and ensure that any response for information or for access or whatever, just be sure that the information that you're releasing is authorized for release. I think that's an important part to think about. So as they are trying to gain information, make sure the information that they're getting is not something that is proprietary, confidential, or information that has been published yet that potentially could lead to a situation where someone could take that information and publish it before you. And then in the end, if you can't verify that the request is legitimate, if you can't, verify the details or understand where this person's coming from, don't respond. And you can report that incident to really the Office of Export Controls. You can, and there'll be some other resources in which you can contact when you have issues like this. When it comes to suspicious network activity, OUIT security does a pretty good job of maintaining security on the networks, and they're monitoring constantly for unauthorized system access and people trying to tunnel into university databases. I think the important part that's in this slide is to kind of get down to those countermeasures, and some things that you can do is just to make sure that you're maintaining your computer, ensuring that you have your software up to date, your anti-malware up to date. Don't rely solely on firewalls. Make sure you're doing your due diligence. If you do find that there are some strange intrusion attempts, contact OUIT security. And again, be careful with phishing expeditions and emails that have suspicious information or have strange looking links. Those are really seem to still be a very effective way in which those bad actors can get into OU systems. Conferences, are such a wide open environment for exchanges of ideas that it becomes sort of a very ripe environment for targeting faculty. And so, what law enforcement, what investigators have found when it comes to conferences and conventions and trade shows in terms of how foreign entities target U.S. researchers, are a number of these indicators. And so prior to the event, again, if you're given an all expense paid invitation to lecture, that's something that needs to be looked at a little more closely as to who the sponsor is, what the intent will be, what the topics are, what you're presenting. As I mentioned before, if you are going to a conference and the entity wants a summary of the presentation, a brief 6 to 12 months in advance, that's a red flag. That's an opportunity for those who have ill intent to sort of review the content and better target individuals who they think have research, that they think they have topics that are much more valuable to them. If you have, instances where you have hosts that have attempted to visit your facility in the past and haven't been able to, and so they invite you out to their space, that's something to be careful of. And again, any kind of travel to an event may pose targeting opportunities. And there's just a host of information out there about how to protect yourself while traveling. But things to look at during the events, which again, this is a lot of stuff is commonplace that we see in conferences and trade shows, for example, excessive photography or filming of technology or products. When people are giving presentations, the thing that you see most are people with their phones holding it up, or their iPads recording the whole thing. But you need to be careful of things where people are taking excessive pictures of technology and products. Casual conversations that sometimes float away from the topic, trying to find more information about, say, restricted research that you're working on. If you get to a point where some of the attendees that you're talking to have business cards that don't match their stated affiliations or have false name tags, again, these are things that are triggers and red flags you need to be careful of. Individuals who are coming to your booth multiple times. Let's say maybe you have some hardware or software that you're showing off at a trade show or a conference, and individuals are coming back more and more often, maybe asking more detailed and probing questions that maybe get outside of the general sort of basic research scope and want to get more into the details of how something works. Again, those are all things that happen all the time in trade shows, but at the same time are becoming more and more problematic because it's a ripe environment to gain access to information. And so, how do you counter that? Consider the information that's you're putting out there, where, when, and to whom. You want to be sure that the information that you're putting out there are things that you've already published, maybe things that are already out in the public domain. If you have people in your lab, in your departments, maybe part of your research team that'll be going out to these conferences, providing them a briefing to talk about potential threats, the precautions to take, and how sort of to react when you get into situations where people are asking questions that you just don't feel comfortable answering. And these are things that the Office of Export Controls are happy to provide, and sort of drill more down into specifics when it comes to the actual conference, trade show, and the content you're taking out there. And again, carefully consider whether equipment or software can be adequately protected. There's security within trade shows, but oftentimes not directly sitting in front of your booth. So if you have hardware that's out there, think about how you can protect that hardware when nobody else is around the booth at that time. Foreign visits. Foreign visits are something that, as a university, happens all the time, whether they're one-time visitors, whether they're long-term postdocs and visiting scholars, students, business associates, sales reps. We have a free flow of individuals to and from the university on a day-to-day basis. But there are some things that we can look out for when we're hosting visitors, or we know we have visitors that are coming out. And so the things to look for that are suspicious or inappropriate during a visit, includes requests for information that, again, go outside the scope of what is the purpose. Whether or not they have hidden agendas associated with the purpose of the visits. If people become hostile because you're not providing the information that they want, that's obviously a big red flag. Individuals bringing cameras and equipment into areas where, photographs are not allowed, wandering visitors, using distractions to slip away. Again, the environments that we are in, it's very easy for visitors to come into the Devon Energy Hall and just kind of be lost at what they're looking at, or the National Weather Center. But it's important as a host, it's important as those you're sponsoring visitors to, be responsible and understand and sort of maintain control of that group so that people aren't wandering off, to potentially get access to spaces and areas that they're not supposed to be in. And then new visitors added to group at the last minute, or switching, pre-screened visitors, oftentimes also is an indicator of potential for wrongdoing, for exploiting sort of our research enterprise and our campus. So what can you do to protect against this? Again, prior to the visit, whomever is the escort or host of this group, just sort of, keep them apprised of the things to look at. Take a look and walk through maybe the tour routes that you're going to be taking visitors on, and kind of take a look at where you might find some vulnerable areas. Notify all the people in maybe your department or in your lab that there's going to be visitors coming through, and just make sure that if you are working on research that is export controlled, that is confidential, proprietary, that stuff is outside of out of view, and make sure that whatever controls are in place are being followed at that time. And then after the fact, talk to personnel who have been in contact with these visitors to see if there's been any of these strange or suspicious activities. And then again, be careful about recording devices, cell phones, flash drives, having access to any kind of technology where it's prohibited. I mean, those are the big things, right? When things are prohibited, make sure people are following along, because you don't want to have inadvertent recordings, pictures, or anything else that could violate confidentiality clauses can violate export control regulations, among other things. Okay, and then finally, recruitment. And this is something that, we don't see a whole lot of, but, a lot of times these big sort of, high profile stories that we see in the news about faculty, a lot of times starts with recruitment. And so foreign governments have individuals that are out there that are spotting and assessing individuals for recruitment. It's not necessarily somebody who has high level access, but sometimes it's the potential for future access to recruit, other targets. Basically, if you're coming in contact with individuals, that you think that are trying to sort of recruit you, that are trying to elicit information from you, some things you can do: change the topic, refer them to public websites, sort of deflect the question, and in some cases feign ignorance if you need to. But what you want to make sure is that you're not disclosing information, or feel pressured to disclose information to anybody who just doesn't need access to that information. It's really important. So that was a long way of talking about sort of the ways in which individuals can steal intellectual property, the methods for stealing intellectual property, for conducting espionage. I want to go back and take a step back and talk a little bit about foreign talent programs. I think foreign talent programs have been very prevalent as well over the last year or so. So if you're not familiar, foreign talent programs are defined, DOE defines them as any foreign state-sponsored attempt to acquire U.S. scientific funded research or technology through foreign government-run or recruitment programs that target scientists, engineers, academics, researchers, and entrepreneurs of all nationalities working or educated in the U.S. More specifically, when we get into the distinguishing features of these talent programs, if you're being asked to join a research group or a program that has a flashy name, I think we've heard about the 1,000 Talents program. That's a name that's not used anymore, but there are various program names that are trying to pull together researchers and offering compensation in many ways to be a part of. And so one of the distinguishing features of a talent program is compensation to the targeted individual in exchange for transferring their knowledge or expertise to the country. That compensation can be cash, funding, titles, career advancement opportunities, promised future compensation, or other types of consideration. Recruitment refers to the foreign state sponsor active engagement in attracting the targeted individuals to join those sponsored programs and transfer their knowledge. The individuals may be employed, located in the U.S. They might be, worldwide. And recruitment would necessarily include an invitation to attend or present work at an international conference. And I want to step back again and say that foreign talent programs aren't illegal. They are not something that we can tell the difference between what is a good talent program and a bad talent program. Federal law enforcement is really behind trying to identify foreign talent programs that are problematic to U.S. researchers. But again, there are some features that we can see with regards to those agreements that come along with these talent programs. So, although talent programs with the individual, there's oftentimes a contract or an agreement that is signed, and there's some information within those agreements that might be very helpful to understand whether or not the group that you're joining is on the good side or is on sort of the we'll say the bad side of it, that have intentions that go beyond academia and just the search for research. And those features include focus on individuals rather than the subject matter, payments that goes well beyond the market value. They're overpaying for the information. Something seems too good to be true. Chances are it is. The entity title for the research implies greater connection than the underlying facts. If they're encouraging residency in their location, Either it's encouraged or facilitated. If it requires the individual to change their primary institution affiliation for purposes of journal citations. So instead of first author and first affiliation being the University of Oklahoma, it may be another research group. And then finally, if the fundamental research purpose is not clear or undefined, it's unclear as to what the purpose of this talent program is, those are all things that you need to take into account before you make a decision whether or not you want to be a part of these talent programs. And again, they're not illegal. There's nothing that is preventing individuals from joining them, but it's a personal decision. It's a business decision that somebody needs to make, prior to getting involved as to whether this is a good idea or not. And, the reason why that it is such a difficult decision is because oftentimes participation in some of these programs create a conflict of interest or a conflict of commitment. And, these are things that continue to be bigger and bigger issues with regards to disclosure. And so the second part of those activities associated with foreign government influence has to do with disclosure, where researchers do not disclose to grant-making agencies or the university your employment agreements, financial sources, other collaborations with foreign entities, or gifts received from foreign entities. And so disclosure of things like conflict of interest, where researchers receive grant funds for research effort and also receive financial benefits for that same research effort from a foreign government, or conflict of commitments, where as a researcher, you may have a 9 or 12-month appointment funded by the university and federal research grant funds, but then also by joining a talent program, being part of another institution where they have an expectation that you will also provide significant allocation of your time. So, it is problematic to have a 12-month appointment at the University of Oklahoma and a 6-month appointment to another university or another research lab. Unfortunately, as much as we would like to have an extra 50% more time to do work, that's just something that we can't get around. So a case study of undisclosed conflicts of interest and commitments, and this is a case out of the University of California, San Diego, having to do with their former chief of eye genetics at the Shiley Eye Institute. This individual received $10 million in NIH grants during the 11 years at UC San Diego. At the same time, founded U.S. pharmaceutical R&D company, Calcite Therapeutics. The founder, undisclosed founder and primary shareholder of a publicly traded Chinese biotech company that specializes in the same work he performed at UCSD. So here's a case where, you have sort of a double dipping of the same research. The individual had multiple undisclosed subsidiaries, additional companies in the US, China, and the Cayman Islands, which is an unreported conflict of interest. And also did not disclose that he was a member of a foreign government-sponsored talent recruitment program. And the result after the investigation was the individual stepping down from their position at UCSD. But here's a case where, again, you have federal dollars that it's going towards research and also using foreign money to sort of duplicate that research. So where can you go to disclose conflicts of interest? You can go to the University of Oklahoma's conflict of interest website. Here's the URL, front page, looks pretty nice. Again, just to be clear, the conflict of interest policy covers all outside employment, conflicts of commitment, and affiliations with other institutions. It requires disclosure review before that activity has begun. There's an annual spring reporting cycle that encourages prospective reporting and confirmation of prior disclosures, and requires final approval from campus-wide conflict of interest committees. An informal approval from the chair, or director, or dean is not sufficient. So a lot of these disclosures need to go through the conflict of interest committee. So what can be, or what should be reported with respect to research? Work for any other university, institution, or government. Support many other university, institute, or government for your research. For example, by providing lab space or assistance materials. Titles at other universities For example, if you're a professor or a visiting professor or lecturer at another university, that needs to be disclosed. Compensation, gifts, personal reimbursement from an entity that sponsors your research. Work for or equity in or serve as an officer for a company related to your research. And then confidentiality agreements for your research results or an agreement to just delay their disclosure. And then SBIR or STTR funding through a company that you own or your family owns, you have equity in or you work for. So, this is a subset of things that need to be reported. Again, you can go to the Norman website. If you are joining us from the Health Sciences Center, there's information here from also the Health Science Center Conflict of Interest website. And again, information there includes some training and processes, policies, and contacts. So these are two good links to have with regards to disclosure of conflict of interest. So it's not just to the university, though, that is important. Obviously, reporting conflicts of interest to the university is a big deal, but also during the proposal submission process, both through Cayuse and the Norman campus and sooner track to the HSC campus, the disclosure of conflict of interest, foreign activities can sort of, that could pop up in a number of different places. And depending on your sponsor, those things may be required to be disclosed in your proposals. So for instance, Cayuse, if you're at Norman campus, you're going through Cayuse, you will see this screen as you're submitting the proposal. And again, you're confirming for federal applications that you're certifying that all of your information is truthful, is updated to the best of your knowledge, that you are not deliberately trying to hide anything, that you just acknowledge that you're disclosing everything that needs to be disclosed for that proposal. It'll show up for NIH proposals as well. You'll need to certify that you're disclosing all the necessary information that's required. And if there's questions about that, ORA and ORS, both great when it comes to answering all the questions that you may have with regards to, what is it that you need to disclose for which federal contract or federal grant that you're engaging in. And again, these questions come up over and over again in NSF and NIH proposal cover sheets. So this is just something to be aware of, that we're not just concerned about disclosing to the university, but disclosing to your sponsors is equally, if not more so, important, because it's where if a federal sponsor finds that you're not disclosing information about ties to other foreign entities that you may have work with, that's where things start to lead down that road of investigations and all those unfortunate situations that we've seen from other universities over the last few years. And again, NSF. So, what are the things that you should look out for? What are the red flags that signal an improper foreign government influence with regards to risk? Again, exchange of money during the collaboration, lack of reciprocity. If the goal of your collaboration with the foreign entity is something other than to publish the research, multi-year collaborations, frequent overseas travel, associations with foreign talent programs, publishing with a collaborator who's not listed on any disclosure forms, foreign collaborators who don't have required background or experience or expertise to support the research topic. If it just seems sort of odd that you have sponsors that want to engage in your research that don't seem to have any ties to your type of research. If the time commitment for the collaboration exceeds the time available, that's a problem, as well as several foreign postdocs or visiting professors in your lab. There's a high turnover of individuals. If those you're collaborating with just want to send individuals over for a month at a time and they're constantly turning things over, it makes it difficult to actually accomplish research if you have new people coming in constantly. And then, individuals who reach out to the university to help with research unknown to you and willing to work for free, or are coming with already paid for. So that's a very common situation where you have graduate students and postdocs who say, I have sponsorship from from my university to come to OU. They'll pay for my salary for the next year to conduct research. That's a red flag that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It just needs to be looked into a lot more closely before accepting those sorts of agreements. And so why do researchers go after these collaborations if they're so risky? Well, money, right? Bonuses, honoraria, direct payments, oftentimes access to state-of-the-art labs and equipment, things that maybe we don't have access to here at the University of Oklahoma, career advancement opportunities, tenure, the ability to obtain funding for their research. There's a lot of competition for limited dollars. And so, having someone come out and offer you, research dollars to do the projects that you want to do it's a great, it's something that is really attractive. Oftentimes for professional reputation and access to additional resources for researchers, whether it's people or materials or, again, labs. Those are the things that seem attractive to these to these relationships. And so that's why we're in the situation where we are in academia, where we're ripe for to be exploited. But there's consequences, right? There's the number of consequences to improper foreign government influences. There's risks to the faculty, reputation, and professional advancement. Theft of your intellectual property, your methods, your data can result in somebody else publishing your research first. Undisclosed conflict of interest and conflict of commitment, could violate your federal grant agreements and many university policies, putting you at risk. Researchers found to have been involved in foreign government influence activities could lose their credibility, their reputation, as well as ability to receive future grant funds, which can really have be very detrimental to your career. And so those are some of the risks to being involved in improper foreign government influences. There's a risk to the university as well. Again, it puts us at legal risk for failure disclosure to our federal funding agencies. That intellectual property that is owned by the university can be credited to other foreign institutions or researchers. Bad press. Nobody wants to wake up and see the university in the headlines for anything other than the great things that we do. And so we want to be careful of our reputation as well. We want to be able to attract the best students. We want to get the best faculty, researchers. We are always looking at our rankings. We are always wanting to be improving our departments and our academic resources. And how we're viewed by federal grant makers is important. And so if we're seen as being a university that's not disclosing, that has a history of being involved with improper foreign government influences, then our federal partners that send us money might not be so willing down the road. Again, those grant making agencies, they also are worried about their mission, right? So whether it's NSF or NIH or various DoD entities, they have their own integrity and their own missions where they're trying to get their resources from Congress. And so issues within those federal grant making agencies are problematic. We also don't want to see, and they also don't want to see, that the money that they're spending on university researchers is really going to help foreign countries and our adversaries. And again, that damage to that reputation can impact the amount of funding it receives from Congress. There's also risks to U.S. national security. Foreign governments gain early access to unclassified research data, methods in combination with other information can have military implications. Foreign governments with access to pre-publication research data can use that information, as a way to sort of develop other sort of, weaponry. And foreign governments have more available funds to advance their military because if it's using research that's been paid for by the U.S. tax dollars. So if they can get their hands on our research without paying for it, they can use that money for other things. And so that all is a risk to our national security. And finally, it comes down to also risking, just U.S. innovation, which keeps us, at the forefront of science and technology research, and risk to our economy. So our economy is not the first to benefit from the product innovation. That's a problem. And if U.S. researchers could be improperly diverted away from lines of inquiry where a foreign government seeks to lead, that's a risk to our economy. So, foreign governments with improper early access to our data and methods can potentially develop that application, can develop that technology earlier than the U.S., which really then sort of puts us in the back. And so we don't want to be in a situation where we're perceived as unable to secure our intellectual property. Because again, that's a risk to our innovation, it's a risk to our economy, and it's a risk to our security. So just kind of to wrap up, and then I'll open for questions. Our government continues to express concern about foreign influence research. The changes in Washington, in the White House, really don't seem to indicate that there's going to be much change in terms of their concern about foreign influence and research in the scientific enterprise. And so here are some publications from MITRE, JCOR, as well as national security policy from the White House with regards to research. I recommend you all taking a few moments to look these up, kind of go through the executive summaries, get an idea of what it is that they're finding sort of in the research enterprise in the US and within academia. And if you see some details, dig in a little deeper, take a look, and read through this. It's incredibly interesting to see where our government is finding that we're vulnerable, and the steps that they are recommending for us to sort of implement to protect our research and our intellectual property and enterprise. As researchers at the university, it's important that we understand what activities are associated with foreign government influence, whether it's disclosures and conflict of interest, whether it's data theft, whether it's improper talent programs. Having at least an introduction to those ideas to make you think a little bit more about the decisions that we make is a good first step. Being able to identify sort of where these threats are coming from, whether it's through academic solicitations, whether it's through conferences or cyber. Again, awareness is incredibly important. Being able to recognize those red flags for foreign influence and why researchers might be interested, it's about awareness and understanding the risks associated with that. And so if there are things in which you walk away with today, it's being aware of your surroundings in the research environments, thinking about those that you bring into your research group, thinking about how you share that information are important, as well as taking a step to the side and thinking about your activities and ensuring that you're disclosing those activities, both to the university and to federal sponsors as required. It's incredibly important to disclose. 90% of the issues that we have seen at other universities with faculty getting into trouble really comes down to a failure to disclose. And on the HSC campus as well as the Norman campus, there's been an increased focus on conflict of interest disclosures, conflict of commitment disclosures. So it's important for a reason. It's not just about understanding everything that a faculty member is doing, but it's ensuring that we have sort of an open understanding, and that our federal grant agencies know what we're doing. For more information and training online with regards to conflict of interest or responsible conduct of research, export compliance, or more on foreign influence, you can go to the CITI program, CITI program.org. You can register. The university has an account through CITI program in which you can get some online modules and training on conflict of interest, foreign influence, export, and responsible conduct of research. And if you have questions, if you have, depending on sort of what your questions might be, here's some contact information myself for things about foreign talent programs, research security, and export control related issues. You can contact myself. For those in the Norman campus who have questions about conflict of interest, you can contact Greg Heiser or the Conflict of Interest Office. If you're on the HSC campus, you can contact Martha Ogilvie. As well as if you have questions about ORA, you can contact Martha. And then finally, if you have questions for ORS proposal services, you can contact Michael Purcell or Fran Stevens. And with that, I'll open this up for questions. We got about 10, 15 minutes left. So if there are questions, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask away. And if there aren't any questions, thank you for spending time this afternoon. I do appreciate the fact that you guys recognize that this is an important topic. And so again, I thank you for your time. I'm going to hang around for another 10 minutes. If you do have questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Andrew. Really good presentation.
Thank you.
Seen a version of that in the past, but it's always good to get a refresher.
Yeah, I hope it's you know, I hope someone walks away with something from it, and we'll put it online and we'll make sure that we get this out to as many people as possible. We'll do this again on March 10th. I'll give the same presentation then. So if there are individuals out there who are like, hey, I think I know somebody who should see this, then there's going to be an opportunity to see this again.
Andrew, would you send us the link for the slides and the recording, please?
Absolutely. We will do that as soon as we get that posted online.
Okay, thanks.
I could probably get you those slides, though, even sooner. So I think I'll have a list of everybody who is, and I've got your email. So I'll send you those this afternoon.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if anybody else wants these slides right away, just leave a note in the chat section, and I'll make sure we get those out. And if there aren't any other questions, feel free to contact me via phone, email. If I were on campus, I'd say stop by the office, but alas, here we are in our COVID world. But please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.